Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss our most thrilling new videos.
The Epic of HADJ Omar Tal. The Circle of Fire. Night had fallen upon the vast, silent savanna. The wind carried the scent of roasted millet and red dust. Beneath a great baobab whose roots seemed to reach deep into the world's memory, an old man sat. His white beard shimmered faintly in the firelight. Around him, 30 children sat in a perfect circle, eyes bright with curiosity. The old man lifted his staff and began in a slow, solemn voice. "My children, tonight I shall tell you about a man whose faith and courage made kingdoms tremble." The fire crackled louder, as if eager to listen. His name, he said, was HADJ Omar Tal, a name carried by the drums to the far edges of the Sahel, a man born to guide, to preach, and to fight. The children leaned closer. The old griot continued, "Listen well, for his story is not that of an ordinary king. It is the story of a destiny forged between faith, iron, and fire. The child of Fouta." Long before the drums of war thundered, in the green hills of FOUTIHOU, a child was born at the end of the 18th century. His name was Omar Tal. His eyes were bright, and from a young age he hungered for knowledge. While other children chased goats through the fields, he listened to the elders reciting the Quran. People said he was born with light in his heart. By 14, he already knew the sacred words by heart. His teachers saw in him a spirit destined for greatness. Fouta, land of scholars and marabouts, gave him his first weapons, faith and speech. But soon, a stronger force would call him to another path, the path of pilgrimage, the path of the Hajj. The road to Mecca. When the time came, Omar Tal set out on the long journey eastward. Across dunes, rivers, and seas he walked, praying and teaching. It is said his stride never faltered, even beneath the burning Saharan sun. Caravans saw him pass, and travelers whispered, "There goes a man seeking God in the wind." Years later, he reached Mecca. There he became HADJ, the accomplished pilgrim, and was granted the title of Caliph of the Tijaniya, spiritual leader of the Tijaniya Brotherhood. But Mecca was not the end of his journey. It was its beginning. His mission now was to bring pure faith back to the lands of West Africa. The return of the pilgrim. When he returned from the east, HADJ Omar Tal was no longer just a scholar. He carried the wisdom of the desert and the strength of faith. Everywhere he went, people gathered to hear him. He spoke of justice, discipline, and moral reform. He would say, "Man must purify his heart before he can purify the world." But not all welcomed his words. Some rulers grew wary of this charismatic marabout who won souls by the thousands. The winds of change were rising, and Omar Tal knew that sometimes faith must defend itself with the sword. The sword and the faith. The griot placed his hand upon the warm sand. "My children," he said softly, "know this. In ancient times, faith and war often walked side by side." Omar Tal raised the sword not to conquer, but to liberate. He gathered his disciples, his talibe, and formed an army known as the Tariqa. They carried the Quran in one hand and the sword in the other. Their battle cry was, "La ilaha illallah." His gaze turned first eastward toward the kingdoms that resisted his reform, and then towards Segu, the mighty Bambara Empire, symbol of worldly power and ancient traditions. The march on Segu. Word spread swiftly. HADJ Omar Tal was marching on Segu, Villages trembled as his troops passed by. Green banners fluttered in the wind, and drums beat to the rhythm of prayer. The king of Segu, Bina Ali, gathered his warriors. He would not bow to a marabout. The two forces met on the banks of the Niger. The battle was fierce, swords clashed, and prayers mingled with cries. But Omar Tal's resolve triumphed. Segu fell, and the Bambara kingdom was absorbed into his growing empire. Thus began the TOUCOULEUR Empire, vast, feared, and unyielding.
The TOUCOULEUR Empire. Segu conquered. Omar Tal did not stop. Under his command rose a vast dominion, the TOUCOULEUR Empire. From Dingiral to Timbuktu, from rivers to dunes, tribes pledged allegiance to the one now called the Conqueror of Faith. He appointed governors, built mosques, and established justice according to divine law. The people lived under a new order, disciplined and devout. But beneath this glory, tensions brewed. Some local chiefs could not bear the strictness of his new laws. And beyond the rivers, another threat approached: the French, bearers of another world, another kind of domination.
The echoes of the river. The Niger River, silent witness to many kingdoms, now carried two rumors, one of Omar Tal's faith and the other of French cannons. The first colonial outposts advanced from Senegal. European officers, dressed in blue, claimed the land. One fought after another. From Segu, Omar Tal looked west and said, "They come not to preach, but to possess." He knew confrontation was inevitable. He gathered his advisers, prayed long into the night, and declared, "If God wills to test our faith, let it be through battle." Soon, the fire of jihad would mingle with the smoke of gunpowder.
The War of Two Worlds. The first clashes erupted along the banks of the Senegal. The two couleurs, armed with courage and blades, faced cannons from afar. Omar Tal's men fought with fervor, reciting verses of the Quran before they charged. But the power of European fire was devastating. Villages burned, fields were destroyed. Yet HADJ Omar Tal never retreated. Quote, "Victory belongs to the believer," he would say. He sent his generals eastward to secure the empire while he led resistance in the west. Thus began the long war against the wind from across the sea. The Lion of Segu. In the heart of the storm, Omar Tal stood unshaken. He prayed at dawn, planned at noon, fought at dusk. People said his eyes shone with inner light, that he saw beyond men. He strengthened Segu, built schools, and kept order amidst chaos. But he knew faith alone could not withstand cannons and betrayal. Some allies turned against him. The French advanced patiently, like a serpent coiling around its prey. Then Omar Tal made a choice to withdraw east, where rock and cliff might shelter his followers, toward Bandiagara, land of the Dogon.
The long march. The children around the fire held their breath. The old man continued. It was a march of iron and dust. Men, women, and children left Segu, crossing rivers and hills under their leader's guidance. War songs became prayers for survival. Omar Tal walked at the front, staff in hand, refusing to ride a horse. He said, "A leader must feel the fatigue of his people." Behind him stretched an endless line, fleeing bullets, seeking refuge in the mysteries of the cliffs. The cliffs of Bandiagara. When the caravan finally reached the cliffs, they stopped in awe. Before them rose a world of stone, tall, majestic, carved with caves and ancient dwellings. The Dogon, guardians of the heights, watched in silence. Omar Tal spoke to them with respect and asked for refuge. They accepted, moved by his faith and humility. In the highlands of Bandiagara, he built his final camp. Days passed in peace, but the nights grew heavy with omens. He knew the world he had built was beginning to crumble. The final sermon. One night, he gathered his disciples in a clearing beneath the cliff. The moon bathed the rocks in silver light. He said, "Do not believe that defeat means the end. God tests those he loves." He spoke of justice, forgiveness, and the duty to pass on the faith, even when kingdoms fall. His words were calm yet profound. Many wept that night. It was the last great sermon of the Master. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath to listen. The shadow of betrayal. But every empire carries within it the seed of its own weakness. Some of his close men, weary of war, sought to negotiate with the French. Secret messages circulated. Foreign spies prowled even among the cliffs. Omar Talli, informed, remained silent. He knew loyalty fades when fear takes root. He only said, "What God decrees, no man can prevent." Then he withdrew into a cave to pray longer than ever before. The invisible siege. French troops approached Bandiagara. They dared not climb the cliffs, but surrounded the region. Hunger and waiting became their weapons. Omar Tal's disciples prayed night and day, hoping for a miracle. But the old leader seemed calm, almost detached. Some said he spoke with angels. Others claimed he saw visions of paradise. One night he simply said, "When the waters of the world grow murky, seek the source." The disappearance. And then, one morning, he was gone. His camp stood silent. His tent was empty. His followers searched the caves, the rocks, the paths. They found his staff laid beside an opening in the cliff. But of him, no trace. Some swore they saw light burst from the rocks that night. Others said they heard a voice singing within the stone. Thus vanished HADJ Omar Tal, between earth and sky, between legend and truth. The disappearance. And then one morning, he was gone. His camp stood silent. His tent was empty. His followers searched the caves, the rocks, the paths. They found his staff laid beside an opening in the cliff, but of him, no trace. Some swore they saw a light burst from the rocks that night. Others said they heard a voice singing within the stone. Thus vanished HADJ Omar Tal, between earth and sky, between legend and truth. The people's tears. News spread across the Sahel. Villages mourned. Imams recited prayers in his name. In Ségou, in Dinguirai, in Timbuktu, lamps were lit for his soul. His son, Amadou Tal, succeeded him and tried to keep the empire standing, but without the father's hand, the pillars trembled. The French advanced. Kingdoms fell one by one. And yet, even in defeat, the name of Omar Tal lived on in the hearts of believers. The desert's echo. Years passed, but his memory did not fade. The griots sang of his courage. The marabouts taught his words. In the markets, elders told of how he conquered Ségou and defied foreign powers. They said, "He vanished into the cliffs, but his spirit still watches over men of faith." Thus, his name crossed time, carried by the desert wind and the evening prayers. The legacy of ashes. The fire was fading. The old man planted his staff in the sand. "Remember," he said, "the story of HADJ Omar Tal is not over. Each time a man fights for truth, he walks in his footsteps. Each time a people refuse submission, they rekindle the flame he left behind." The wind carried the last sparks into the night. The children stared at the sky in silence. One of them whispered, "Grandfather, will he ever return?" The old man smiled. "Perhaps," he said, "but not in a form our eyes can see, for great spirits never die. They become breaths in the wind, echoes in memory, and ashes beneath the baobab."
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss our most thrilling new videos.